Welcome to training with the OCG contracts team, finding answers to frequently asked questions. I'm Nick Vita, Senior Contracts Officer with the Office of Contracts and Grants. I've been with CU for about 5.5 years. I think a lot of you know me. I work with Series, IBS, and ICS right now. I've worked with civil engineering, JILA, most of the departments on campus actually. And I handle all student projects right now. I started with LASP actually for a year and then came over to the Office of Contracts and Grants 4.5 years ago. And I will let Kate introduce herself.
All right, thanks, Nick. Hi, everyone. I am Kate Stansfield. I'm a contract administrator. I joined OCG in June, so I've been here about 8 months now. And prior to that, I was a graduate student in the psychology and neuroscience department here. So yeah, we're excited to answer your questions today. We do have a bit of a dog theme in this presentation. This is Nick's dog Lupe and my dog Layla. They'll be popping up again, so I hope you enjoy that. And I'll pass that over to Nick.
And our dogs might be popping up again, or at least mine might if Amazon delivers anything in the next hour. So they might be popping up in real life too. So just a brief overview here of the frequently asked questions we're going to answer. I think that you can actually click these. I'm not sure if you can in PDF and they'll take you to the question itself, but if not, you can find the question on the slide. All of these questions we're going to answer. And then if you have any questions on these questions or anything else, we're going to ask that you ask those questions at the end of the training. So the first question that we get all the time, and I think this really applies to all the actions we handle, all the actions CCO handles, all the actions venture partners handle, all the sorts of things across campus, but who handles blank? And you can see that my dog and her friend Radar are super concerned about who handles what. And we know in our office that it can be extremely confusing, even to us, as to who handles what. We have all sorts of things that come through that honestly, sometimes we aren't even sure who's supposed to handle it. We sometimes get documents that we've never even seen before. So the blank here, who handles blank here is hard because it can be so many things. And it really depends on so many factors because of the number of items that come through here. So when it comes to types of awards, monetary, non-monetary, licensing, property, or really anything else, we do have a breakdown of what is assigned to who within OCG, as well as a breakdown of who handles what on the contracts and subs team. So if Kate wants to click on the research administration roles and responsibility matrix real quick, we have a pretty neat matrix that I actually didn't know existed for a very long time. And if you scroll down, there are all sorts of different things that, different actions that happen within our office, within CCO. You can see all the acronyms on the right. And Kate, if you just click, let's say, award setup, you can see that getting internal approvals is the primary responsibility of the PI, but also supported by the administrator, the department administrator, and OCG. So for a lot of the actions that come through our office, this matrix is really good. It's included here on this slide, and then it's going to be included again in a helpful links slide at the end of this. And then when you do find out that it's supported by OCG, we have a very helpful who specifically works for your department on this task. And if we go back to the slide real quick, or actually, I think you can just click directory up at the top of this page. Sorry, Kate. This link is also in the slide, but we have a directory here. If we, for example, just go to arts and sciences, and let's say we choose applied math for fun, and it gives you pretty much everyone you would need on the OCG side, as well as the department contacts that generally work with OCG in here. So I know that sometimes it's kind of difficult to figure out who might be handling something between a contract officer, a grant officer, a contract administrator, sub-award officer, subcontract officer. We'll get to the contract and grant thing later, but generally that website is kept up to date. The administration roles and responsibilities in the OCG directory both. It's kind of ever evolving. It's one of those things that as we bring on new people, as we hire new people and shift roles and responsibilities, those things change, and we try and keep that as updated as possible. And if there are big changes, we try and keep you in the loop with that. And this is going to be something that I'm going to say for most of my slides, but as always, you can reach out to myself or whichever contract officer is working on your department if you have questions with something. But we thought these would be helpful tools for you to find just in the future for being able to figure out who handles what. I believe Kate has the next slide.
Yes, and there's a lot of clicking for me with unmuting and everything, so I apologize for the pauses between slides. But the next thing that we wanted to go over is how to determine if an award is managed by the contracts team or the grants team. And so Layla's going to help me answer this question. So to start, the main difference between a contract and a grant is basically just what rules the award is governed by. So the grants team, for instance, they handle all of the prime federal funding grants that are governed by uniform guidance, or 2 CFR. The CFR is the Code of Federal Regulations. Whereas the contracts team, they handle all of the prime federal funding contracts that fall under the Federal Acquisition Regulations. We call those the FAR clauses. And if an award is not federally funded, it basically just comes down to if there is a need for negotiation, and that's what our lovely contract officers do. So that might not mean anything to you, and that's okay, because there's a way to check in InfoEd which team is handling an award. So we have this screenshot down here to show you in InfoEd, there's an awards tab. And within that tab, there's a section that shows the other award details, and it will actually say either contracts team or grants team. But I'm actually also going to show you a quick demonstration for another way that I check. Let's do this. All right, so I have just a random award open here in InfoEd. Like I said before from the screenshot, if you go into the awards tab, you can see, scroll down, the team, in this case, contracts team is selected. If for some reason there isn't a team selected, it should be, but there is another way to check. Within the awards tab, we keep all of the status for the award in this area called the award tracking. So if I open that up, I usually make it bigger. You can see all of the award increments within the record. So I'm just going to open up the first one. And what's nice is that when someone first logs an award, when they're first putting it into the InfoEd system, so like here, the first status, award logged forward to contracts, the logger will typically put a comment that says either CO or GO, contract officer or grant officer, with that person's name. So that will let you know if it's a contract or a grant, and also which officer is handling the award. So that is very helpful. All right, and now I'm going to pass it back over to Nick to answer if we have award funds.
So this, I believe, is everyone's favorite question. We do get this question a lot. Obviously, PIs need their funds. We have several ways to check the status of awards and to see when that funding might be ready. So I'm going to use InfoEd here actually to show how we can check the InfoEd status in the award workflow. I believe Kate, if you want to go back, just go real quick back into InfoEd. And let's go ahead and just, even though we have that proposal record up, let's just search it again. So I'm not actually sure what you all see as DRAs, but we have this quick find. Inputting a proposal number. So if Kate inputs this proposal number that's already up, but we'll do it again just for fun. I think obviously most of you know how to do this, but we're just going to go through the steps real quick. There's two ways to find out if we have the award in-house. The first way would be going into the proposal itself. So this 2007-0097 and going to proposal tracking and edit or view. I don't believe you all have edit access, but if you, either one will get you there. And then we wait for InfoEd to load because it likes to do that. And then if you go to the awards tab again, which is a common theme here, The award AWD on the very bottom of the awards tab takes you to what Kate had showed you earlier. The same thing that gives you some information about who is handling this and what the status is. And if you go to that initial award, the first one here, what we do, and we've talked about this before, I believe, but what we do is the moment at the bottom of this, which I believe was the 24th of July of 2020. So that award increment is created. That is when we have received the award here in OCG. So any award that we receive, the contract officer will send to, or if it's a grant, the grant officer, if the grant or contract officer receives it, they'll send it to our OCG listserv. And it then gets logged by whoever's logging that day. So when that award increment is created, we've started the clock is how we term it. And we will start working on that award. So that means the award has come in. A lot of times we get questions about the status of an award. And we had some internal discussion on this actually on our team the last couple of weeks before this training. But generally contract officers, and this is something that with a few new hires and a little bit better staffing should be a little bit more detailed moving forward, hopefully. But we try and provide comments and statuses in the contract in this workflow itself. So if you look at this one needed some OIT review. That was probably the biggest issue on this one. Some of them are a lot different. So we have a bunch of statuses. And Kate, if you want to scroll up a little bit and drop down that status bar, if you don't mind. So this isn't all of the actions that we can have because we've already sent it, because project setup has set this one up, but we have all these statuses that allow us to say, for example, letter of exceptions was sent and it's open. So that neg is negotiations. That is probably one of my most frequent ones because I'm working on a contract with someone and sending a letter of exceptions or negotiating with them. And I try and keep these statuses updated and say, look, if we worked on this, and we've sent it back over to the sponsor, here is our letter of exception status. Here's the day we did that. The cool thing about Info is it does let you backdate the actual date that it happened. The update date will not reflect that, but it'll backdate to when you actually did that action. So Kate, if you want to go to the next slide, real quick, and we'll come back to this Info record in just a second, but the next slide is the probably bigger question, where's my speed type? So this slide is not meant to throw the CCO under the bus, just to be clear, but the speed type is generally dependent on processing, which is our team's responsibility, and CCO backlog. So for speed type, if you look at that record that Kate had opened up earlier in that award tracking status, if you want to go back to that real quick, Kate. This one, since it is the initial, has been set up by project setup. But for future reference, anything that is workflow, the one that is from 22 September, work OCG review complete forwarded to CCO. Oh, I'm sorry, Kate, you're in the right spot. The effective date one, workflow OCG review complete forwarded to CCO. That's when it's been sent to CCO. At that point, unless there are issues, which generally all of my awards that I send have issues because I'm really bad at processing, they come back, they go over to CCO, who then sets up that speed type. The contract processed and workflow reassigned contract, those statuses tell you that the contract administrator has it in their queue and is working on processing that contract. So when that contract has been processed, it'll say contract process and come back to the contract officer. So kind of a helpful way to see what's going on with that contract or that contract mod in the system, which should be kept pretty up to date, as opposed to asking the contract officer what the status is, because generally those emails might take a few days to respond, but going into Info, you can find that information pretty quickly. If you are in a rush for a speed type, if you want to go back to that slide real quick. If you are in a rush for a speed type, let us know. We can mark proposals and award increments as a rush, or awards and award increments as a rush. A lot of times those rushes get turned around in about 24 to 48 hours, which is much more, which is quick. I think generally we're seeing a turnaround, and it depends obviously on staffing, but a turnaround of about a week or so. And we're doing awards that aren't a rush. They're a little bit more detailed, but when things get sent to CCO as a rush, we generally work with CCO to set those up as quick as we can. We do get a lot of questions, and this was sort of this was a very long frequently asked question, so it's more frequently asked questions, but about the invoicing status as well. So once OCG and once the contracts team has sent over a contract, an award, or an award increment to CCO, unfortunately, we're not really contract managers. We send that over to CCO, and that's sort of the end of our job there, unless we made a mistake, which again, I do all the time. So any invoicing status should generally go to your CCO area accountant. That's somewhat ever evolving too. And we have a link here for that. We're not going to click on it, but very simple, shows you who your area accountant is based on the sponsor type. I believe there's actually out there somewhere an invoicing link to invoicing, who handles invoicing for what. Actually, these area accountants are based off of departments, not sponsors. The invoicing is based off of sponsors. I don't know where that document resides, but I don't think it's actually out on the internet. So yeah, again, any of these questions that you're not sure about, feel free to reach out to your CO. And I'm going to pass this one back off to Kate.
Okay, let's talk no-cost extensions. So the first thing I want to help answer is, when do you request a no-cost extension? So as a PI or DRA, you should receive an automatic notification from the finance system that alerts you when an award is 90 days, 60 days, and 30 days prior to a project end date. And at that point, the PI should have a good idea of whether or not an extension is necessary. And so if it is necessary, we have this link here. One way to find this that works for me is you Google CU Boulder OCG NCE form, and it's the first link that pops up. But we have linked it here. So I'll show you what that looks like. So if you need to request a no-cost extension, you go into this link. There's some information for you. And then you just click on the sponsor for the award you need the extension for, whether it's NSF, NASA, NIH. For most of our contracts with industries, it would be another sponsor. So you click that, and it's just an online form that you would fill out with lots of information. Once you fill out and submit this form, it gets sent to the appropriate email inbox, whether it's OCG contracts or the grants inbox. And as one of the 4 contract administrators that handles research, we are the ones that manage these no-cost extensions. So in order to find out if it's actually been requested by one of us, again, you can check in InfoEd. So we have the screenshot down here for you to see. Under the submissions tab in InfoEd, there's an agreements folder. And this is where we keep up to date all of the statusing on no-cost extensions. So a no-cost extension falls under a sponsor request. And so there would be an agreement folder labeled sponsor request. And if you open it up, it will have, just like Nick was showing with the award tracking, it will have all of the statuses shown for what's going on with that request. Basically, if there's an agreement folder made, that means that it's been requested. If you still have questions, obviously you can always email ocgcontracts@colorado.edu if it's a contract. I spoke with the grants team, and they said it's usually better to contact the grant officer if it's a grant. But I think, the reason why I wanted to walk through this is because you'll probably get a faster resolution if you're able to look in InfoEd and find the information you need instead of emailing. So that's how you know if it's been requested. But how do you know if a no-cost extension has been approved? So when an extension has been approved, we actually move it from the agreement folder to an actual awards tab. So the last status in that agreement folder is going to indicate that it's been moved to that award tracking. So right here, you can see on the screenshot, the last status in the agreement says award received, tracking moved to AT. AT stands for award tracking. So we've moved it to the award folder. And then if you look at the award increments, like we've been doing in the other demonstrations, there's going to be an increment that has the type extension. And that's how you know the extension has been approved. We've created this award increment and it's in process. And as you can see by Lupe's happy face, She's very happy because now she has more time to do her snack research. All right, and I'm going to hand it over to Nick to cover sponsor approvals.
To be clear, that's actually Lupe's face when she sees a squirrel or a rabbit. But no. So this is a question about sponsor approval. This one is featuring Layla and Indy and their amazing ears. And they're worried about reallocating funds to pay for more snacks. So they put too much funding in their labor and benefits, and now they have no money for snack equipment, and that's sad. So we get this question a lot. And this is something that I have talked to a few departments about, and we're starting to do a little bit of a different job here with the question of, do we need sponsor approval for this, which generally is a question about budget changes. We are going to try and start doing a little bit better job, and I can't promise for everyone. I shouldn't say a better job, but a little bit different job, depending on workload. There is a terms and conditions tab in InfoEd. Kate, if you don't mind going back to that record, any record we've had open for this presentation. All right, so back into this Naval Ice Center, this NSIDC proposal. So if you, again, go to the award tab on the far left and go down to terms and conditions, this is a feature that we've had for a little while. And we've been so overstaffed, I wish, so understaffed that we haven't really had time to do a great job of filling this out and having these terms and conditions. At least I haven't on each contract that we have. Sometimes we don't have terms and conditions that really require us to fill something out here, but if you look at this, you can see that there's some property restrictions involving Kaspersky Lab equipment and other covered entities, as well as some Chinese companies as far as telecommunications and surveillance equipment or video surveillance services or equipment. One of the things that's really interesting about this awards and this terms and conditions tab, Kate, if you go up to that add tab on the top right, we can in fact add, and if you want to just like drag that out, there you go. So there are some financial ones here. If you're kind of in the middle there, there's a no budget deviation allowed, financial unrestricted funds, financial 90-day pre-award spending allowed. One thing that we can do, if it is helpful, we scroll to the bottom of this, we can actually add our own thing. So if Kate, like if you started typing a name, you could just say Lupe Snack Fund, and actually don't save this, please. But the description could say that we are required to request approval for any budget changes for a budget category that is over 10%. A lot of times that's in the terms and conditions of a contract. So the sort of step-by-step here, I think, would be check in InfoEd and see what the terms and conditions say. If there's nothing helpful there, check the contract and see if the budget change or change looks to be allowable without requesting approval. If that is not something that you really can figure out based on the contract, please reach out to myself. I'm happy to look at the contract and let you know. Sometimes they do get a little strange. And as much as I try to make sure that contracts are really clear on budget deviations or just anything else that might be a change that we need to have, sometimes it does get a little sticky. Allowable and allocable costs. There's a little note here on this slide that if Kate, you want to go back to that slide real quick, that your CCO area accountant can answer those allowable or allocable costs. We can help out with that, but that's an initial question for your CCO area accountant. If we go to the next slide, we kind of walked through this already, but this is a maybe hopefully helpful little screenshot of where that terms and condition box resides and what those terms and conditions might be. So this one actually, the example shows that no cost extensions require prior approval. So sometimes somebody will say in a contract that no cost extensions need to be requested 90 days prior to the end of an award ending, or the award, the end date, the current end date. So stuff like that gets put in here as well. I think that's all for this one. Kate, if you would like to take the next one.
Sure. So this is a question that we've received often, how to reflect a DRA change in an InfoEd record. So the short answer is that, yes, we can absolutely reflect that change. We are aware that roles within departments can change often, and so we can certainly do an admin modification to update the DRA. The question to ask is whether or not this change is urgent. If it is, that's not a problem. Just contact your grant officer or contract officer, and they can initiate that modification. If it's not urgent, however, it does save a lot of administrative work if we're able to incorporate this DRA change in the next modification to the award. So let's say we're expecting a funding modification in the next month. We might just make a note to include that DRA change in the next modification, and that will kind of move the process by a bit quicker. So that was a quick one, and now Nick has a less quick one.
All right, can we move funds from a sub to the main account or vice versa, actually? And this one stars Calder and Kaiko. And they also have snack research money issues, which seems to be a common issue with dogs here. Maybe need to work better on their initial proposals. This is something that, again, goes back a little bit to that terms and conditions tab. So we'll try and have whether or not moving funds from a sub to a main account needs approval. If it does need approval, there's a sub-award reallocation form that's linked here. And there's an amazing video by, well, it's voiced by Roger McCormick, who's one of our amazing info ed humans here at OCG. And he has an amazing voice. If you really just want a calming voice and don't even care about learning about sub-award reallocations, go listen to that video. I'm not even kidding. If you don't know, if you can't find out if sub funds can be moved from the main to the sub or sub to the main without approval, go ahead and contact your contract officer. It's a tongue twister. And the contract officer will go ahead and work on getting approval for that. And we'll loop the subcontract officer, they'll loop them in as possible, as needed. It kind of depends on the process. And a lot of times the subcontract officer they need to be involved until that modification has gone through, at which point they'll be notified that there's a change to the sub funding, and we'll work with the subcontractor to issue that funding or to deobligate that funding. I think that's it for that one. Actually, not that long, so that's good.
All right. Well, we have one last prepared frequently asked question that seems like kind of a silly one, but it's actually real. I imagine this question being asked with like a shaking fist. I don't know if you can see my video, but word is that sometimes the federal website for reporting doesn't work, and that can be very frustrating. So what can we do about that? Well, clearly Teddy here disapproves of this problem. And believe it or not, one thing that sometimes resolves this issue is simply clearing your cache or your browser history and using a different browser. We have heard that that often will resolve the problem. It's the old turn it off, turn it on again trick. But in all seriousness, the compliance team are the lovely people who manage reporting. And so if you do have issues with the reporting website or other aspects of reporting, you will have more luck reaching out to them at ocgreports@colorado.edu. So hopefully that helps answer that question. So that is what we have in terms of prepared frequently asked questions. Thanks to Nikki, we have this great compile of resources for you. So these are some of the links that we've gone over already today. And if you've received the slide deck from Nikki, you can have these accessible to you. But with that, we would be happy to answer any questions that you may have. You can feel free to unmute yourself to ask a question or put it in the chat, and Nick and I can try to help answer, or Lupe and Layla here.
We'll let Betty ask a question real quick. It looks like Betty raised her hand.
Oh, actually, I was just going to add something, and it had to do with the browser issue for reporting. The latest edition of the update to Mac broke pop-up windows, so that caused a lot of problems for people trying to submit reports. So yeah, check the browser first.
Yeah, and just the questions here, just to be clear, Lupe's question is why the heck would you ever give me a bath? And I think Layla's question is why is the US so bad at soccer or men's soccer, not women's soccer. We're great at women's soccer. So, but yeah, any questions? Go ahead. And if not, you can always ask questions later. You can always email Kate and I. Happy to respond to those questions as well.